Since the Renaissance, both performing and non-performing artists have been self-employed through the sale of their work. This video series will introduce you to several Midwest entrepreneurs who have turned their art into flourishing enterprises. The Entrepreneurial Artist Series has been made possible by a grant from the Coleman Foundation, funding programs that make a difference in entrepreneurship education, cancer care and research, and handicapped education and housing.
Hello, I'm Julie Swanson. In the first part of the series, we talked with Mike Watkins and Matt Barresi about the commercialization of their production Lobster Boy. We learned about the original concept of the musical, forming their own production company, and also their personal aspirations. Working in a market like Chicago, Mike and Matt found that competing for theater space, as well as finding talented and specialized performers, can take a great deal of time and effort. To help bring their vision to the stage, they realized they needed outside help. They hired set designers, choreographers, costume lighting and sound designers, as well as a director. We concluded part one with a discussion about finding investors and financing their production. In this episode, we're going to continue our discussion with Mike and Matt on the business elements of their production Lobster Boy. We'll learn how they dealt with marketing, advertising, and the legal issues of commercializing their artwork. How did you advertise this production?
We did a lot of print ads. Radio ads tend to not be good for theater because they're reminder ads, and unless you have a lot out there, they don't do a whole lot of good. So we did a lot in print, the various Chicago papers. We also had a publicity person, a PR lady, who actually did a pretty good job of getting the press there. We had a good amount of press there for an unknown show by two unknown artists. We had the major papers were all there to see the show and review it and get the word out in all the papers, the listings and things like that.
Advertising costs a lot. We spend a lot of money. The Chicago Tribune is the preeminent newspaper in Chicago. We, for 1 week, bought a full-page ad to show the Chicago community that we meant business, that we had a show that we thought should be shouted from the rooftops as much as any Broadway road show in town. There's a lot of entertainment out there. There's a lot of things to do on a weekend. Some of it involves staying home. As Mike said, there's 130, 150 shows going on at the same time in Chicago, plus all the movies that are playing, plus your video game systems and your video rentals and your DVDs, and you can go out to eat and you can go dancing and you can go jump in the lake, but you might not want to go see a musical. So you'd better advertise, and you'd better be willing to make your advertising budget as big as the whole rest of the budget for your show, and keep that budget going every week, and it's going to hurt. And the first thing that you're going to want to cut when you go, oh, my model was wrong, I need to cut back on the money, we're not making as much money as we thought, we got to cut back on something, you're going to want to cut that advertising, but you can't.
Also, making sure that your ads are appropriate, making sure that you can say in a quarter-page ad or in a half-page ad everything you need to say. You know, of course, the basics: where is it, how much is it, what numbers do I call, but also why do I want to go there. So as much as having ads out there, they've got to be enticing. They've got to say what you want them to say. Otherwise, you can have all the ads in the world and it won't do a bit of good. We went through several drafts of ads and finally came with something that we felt was enticing and told the story of the show and what we wanted them to see.
We gave models of posters to our poster designer, to our PR lady, to people who were giving us advice that had our names on it really big, and our production company presents Lobster Boy, and they said, this doesn't get people in the seats. Why do they want to see this? You need something provocative, you need something sexy. So we went back and we made it so. There's also a lot of free ways to get advertising, and by free, I mean if you can get interviewed by different forms of media. That will really get the name out there. Your PR person should have a lot of contacts. That's what they're there for, contacts. They send press releases and information not only to reviewers, but to interviewers from papers, from radio, from TV. She did an excellent job. We also went out on our own. We got on some nationally syndicated radio shows. We got on a lot of local radio shows. We got on local television, on the Chicago morning shows, singing our songs. And we got a lot of articles about us, particularly being young artists, coming up with this fresh, maybe even bizarre work. It got us some attention, and you have to find what is it about this show that's gonna sell it. Now is a good time, I think, to be a young artist with some fresh, strange perspective on things. So we played on that too. Young guys, fresh idea, new show. You gotta see it.
We did a lot of distributing. We did a lot of the grunt work ourselves. We got our moms, our girlfriends out on the streets, passing out flyers, putting up posters, making sure that the word got out about our show, making sure that when someone looked in the paper and saw our ad, said, "Lobster Boy, yeah, I've heard of this before." So it's just getting out there. Also, public relations, like Matt was saying, can be more important, especially early on, than your advertising. And it gets tense. You want to cut your advertising, but you can't. You've got to keep it going. Both advertising and public relations. You've got to be on your public relations person if you've got one, or you've got to be on your contacts if you're doing it yourself. And it's a full-time job, staying on top of that, making sure the word is getting out.
We looked for sources that would be interested in the story of the Lobster Boy, whether that was chat rooms about sideshows. We found some major local radio shows that talked about the old story of the Lobster Boy. We got a hold of them and said, "Hey, Lobster Boy, talk to us." We had people from a major local television station that had come to see the show and took an interest, so we leveraged that into getting onto television. We thought, who likes off-kilter entertainment? We handed out flyers at the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The people flipped for that. And of course, college crowds, we approached them with great enthusiasm because they enjoy something that's offbeat.
Besides marketing and placing ads for your work, producers must also learn all the management aspects of their business.
We had to sign a contract to rent the theater, and of course, you have to prove things like $1 million liability insurance, things like that. You have to show that you're a bona fide corporation and things like that. And of course, we had contracts with the actors and all the artistic people, the directors, the designers, things like that. Those were put together by us and, of course, proofread by our lawyer to make sure they were very legit.
Basic drafts of all contracts were developed by our lawyer or advised by our lawyer. The brunt of the paperwork went to the investors and to the theater and to insurance and accounting. But we also had to draw up a less formal but certainly pertinent contract for all designers and actors as well. They signed it. It said that they would appear, gave them a few guidelines. It wasn't a union show, so the rules for us to follow to have them in the show and for them to follow to be in the show were not as staunch as they might be. But certainly they had to show up, they had to come to any rehearsals, and also any side promotions and advertisements that they would have. They gave their permission for their images to be shown. They promised that they would come to these promotions. And they were obliged to be in the show for the given length of the show, and were given an option to renew their parts if the show continued.
Some less obvious but equally important legal issues also need to be taken into consideration before you open the doors to the public.
One issue was that this was inspired by a real story. So we had to make sure that what we did, we changed the names and it's really our own story, but we had to make sure that what we were doing wasn't libelous or slandering any real people. And our lawyer assured us that, in fact, because he was a celebrity, the person that this story was inspired by, that as long as we weren't doing anything slanderous, we were okay.
We had to put some disclaimers on things in our programs and in some advertising that said that this was inspired by actual events, but not based on a true story necessarily, that any resemblances to living persons or dead persons is coincidental. And we had to make sure that none of the content of our script was drawn from any books or articles or videos that existed on people who called themselves the Lobster Boy during the history of the carnival or people related to the carnival. Once it had been established that we had not taken any of the dialogue or anything from any sources, and that the names had been changed, and that it was in fact our own story, and that we were telling that to people, not that it was the telling of anyone else's story, then we could proceed. And we made sure that we were square with that before we proceeded. It would be a darn shame to work for 3 years and then find out that you had to close or give up all your money, or give up all your money and then some, because you'd slandered someone, you'd libeled someone, you'd misrepresented someone.
Another just basic issue is the legalities of raising the money and having the company and things like that. And the lawyer took care of that. We had a 75-page prospectus that each investor was given that denoted the terms of the partnership and things like that, which we had to read very carefully and make sure everything was fine. And it filled, of course, with legalese that is beyond a composer and an author's grasp, but we had to make sure we did understand it, and it was overwhelming at first how much there was legally to handle, but it's part of the game. So
you can't be afraid of the paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork that you had better get out of the way. You would better be legally square. You'd better have your prospectus in line, your contracts in line, your insurance in line. You can't skimp on that stuff. But you don't want to get immersed in the paperwork, which is why we didn't become not-for-profit. It's also, there's a certain amount of paperwork in raising money from people within the state of Illinois, where we held the show. There was exponentially more paperwork in getting money from out of state. So we were legally obligated to get all our money from in-state. So you have to keep a careful balance with your contracts and with your paperwork. Don't let it get out of hand, but keep your bases covered.
Forming their own production company allowed Mike and Matt to maintain control throughout the entire process of producing Lobster Boy.
it gave us freedom. We didn't have to see our work as author and composer being changed by the producer, because ultimately the producer, who has the rights to do the show and do what they want with it, has the final say. So we kind of had a check that we could have the final say if we saw the production going in a way that we didn't want it to go artistically. So that was kind of our fail-safe, as well as the most prudent way to get it going.
Keeping accurate accounting records is essential when dealing with investors. Take the time to find someone who knows the business and can be trusted with your financial paperwork.
The books were kept by my father. Actually did the basic money counting, and our family attorney, who was an accountant, kept the books and made sure our taxes were paid on time and showed us the legal documents that we needed to keep our company legit. So basically you want someone you trust, and someone who's competent. We knew that our family attorney was both those things, so we went with him.
What surprises did you come across?
Little things, like batteries for mic packs. We had a contingency built into our budget, but there are things that come up that you don't realize. Oh, we need insurance? Of course. We say of course now, but going into the process, we didn't have a clue.
We didn't know as much about theater tech as we probably should have, technical theater. We didn't realize that our lamps, the bulbs inside of our lighting instruments, were going to burn out. We didn't realize the color media that fits on the front that makes the lights colored was going to burn out, or that it costs so darn much. Everything's going to be more expensive than you think, and your contingency for things that you just didn't think of, it better be pretty high also, because you're going to be surprised by some things. We have a bearded lady in the show, and one day her beard dissolved in the night. It fell apart, and we needed another beard really fast. Things like that come up all the way through it, and there better be a little extra cash sitting around just in case.
Just as an artist continually works on their craft, they also need to expand their business skills. Looking back on this production of Lobster Boy, Mike and Matt have gained valuable experience and learned many lessons from all the unexpected challenges they faced.
I think I would have definitely allowed more time. I would have workshopped the piece more. It had been 2.5 years since we'd seen it in front of an audience, produced, on stage. We'd done some readings to test out the material, but there are things that you see when it's in front of a crowd night after night that you can change along the way, which, as I mentioned before, we did little minute changes, but I think workshopping is a vital part of a work. And I think a good 2 or 3 weeks of solid workshopping previews before you open and officially show it to the public are invaluable.
We had the show in a new theater. We thought it might be exciting to have a new show by a new company in a new theater, and that was an advantage to us in some ways. However, it was a new theater that hadn't been widely heard of, and it was geographically, although it was within the city of Chicago, further out than a lot of the theaters, so that may have cost us quite a few ticket sales. We knew going in that this could be a disadvantage. To be in another theater, we would have had to waited longer, and again, perhaps our time frames weren't quite long enough, so we went with this theater. As I said, it might have cost us tickets, but we didn't have another year to wait to see if we could have gotten into another theater. It's important. I mentioned that there's a lot of forms of entertainment out there, a lot of options for people to spend their money on the weekend. You have to make it as easy as possible for them to see your show. We had free parking, but it was hard to get to the theater. It's got to be very easy. And city people, they don't have cars. Oftentimes, they use public transportation. Can you get to the theater through public transportation? Is there parking? Is it safe? Are you near other theaters? Are you near restaurants? Are you near hotels? Are you near where people live? Are you near where the theater goers live? Are you by other places theater goers go? We weren't. And it cost us.
Another interesting option is forming a not-for-profit company, a resident company that can be a vehicle for our work and maybe other things. We've got a group of colleagues that are skilled in various different things. That's something that we've talked about and may endeavor in. But as Matt said, our passions are in creation.
It'd almost be a shame if we didn't produce anything else, because we learned so much about it. We know so much more now than we did, and it's such a hard lesson to learn, it would be a shame to let that go to waste. So perhaps we'll continue with our not-for-profit company, and we will have more works to develop in the future. If nothing else, maybe we can workshop our works in development, if not put them on stage as an end product.
Where do you see your careers going from here?
We know more about producing now. We could produce again in the future. It's not our passion. We've been trained as performers. We do some directing. Writing, for me, I won't speak for Mike, is really the passion. I may go get further education, get a master's degree in writing for the musical stage or for the stage. Ultimately, I'd like to see myself a widely known name and a respected name in writing, ideally musicals.
That's the same aspiration for me. Writing gives me the most joy. It is where my passion is. I do love working, music directing, and I'd like to continue a career as music director / composer, and I would love to make my living that way. Whether I'm famous or not, hey, it'd be great. Whether I make a fortune or not, that'd be great too. But as long as I'm able to do that, and whatever path I take, whatever career I'm at, if I'm able to write and continue to collaborate, then I'll be happy.
An entrepreneurial artist should not focus all their energy on one project. New ideas help a business grow and maintain stability. Keep other works in development and give established ideas a break when needed.
I think at this point, it's time to put it to rest for a little while. It's been almost 4 years since the start, and I would like to work on something new. We've learned a lot. We've grown as artists considerably, that I think it's time to explore our new voices in a completely different work.
I agree. It's important, because we've grown so much since we started 3 years ago, it's important that we work on something else. I still believe in this work. We should come back to it. In the future, when we know even more, when we have more connections, maybe we can do something else with it. But it's really time for us to focus on something new. It's been great, and it's time to try something new.
What is the most important thing you've learned in this process?
Well, there's so much that we've learned throughout this whole experience that it's hard to sum up one thing. You know, there's many things involved that helped us.
Make sure you give yourself enough money to do what you need to do. It's going to cost more than you think. Make sure you have a thoroughly educated forecast on how much it will cost you, and enough money for contingencies that will arise as you work through your production.
Give yourself enough time to do what you need to do, whether it be raising money, workshopping, making sure your work is exactly where you want it. But ultimately, you need enough time to make sure you have the kind of production you want and that everything falls into place. It's going to take a lot more time than you think, and don't corner yourself or don't cheat yourself by giving yourself too little time. Be bold. Be bold when raising your money. Raising money can be a daunting task. I don't think there's anything more difficult than going to someone and asking for their hard-earned money. But if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe in your project, show them that. Make them believe, and you know, don't be afraid.
Don't get overwhelmed by the paperwork and the legalese and the business that you're going to have to learn to pull off your production. Keep in mind your original goal. Keep in mind the artistic project that you believed in that made you get involved in this in the first place.
Be a student of your art. Learn everything there is to know. Read books, talk to people. They will be willing to give you information. Take all that in. Learn everything you can, because you're going to need that knowledge.
Have fun. Yeah. Remember to have fun. Yeah, it was fun when you started. It was fun when you were learning about it. Let it be fun when you're doing it.
When Mike and Matt first decided to take Lobster Boy from a college project to the professional stage, they had limited knowledge of the process involved. Over a 3-year period, not only has the content of the musical changed, but the knowledge and experience of its producers has grown as well. These are some of the areas they had to consider: timelines, budget preparation, investors, bookkeeping, advertising, marketing, contracts, insurance, legal issues, theater location, auditions, technical theater personnel, salaries, rent, and ticket prices. Thank you, Matt and Mike, for your time and information.
Thank you. Thank you.
It will help other aspiring entrepreneurial artists to see how they can independently market their own product. Thank you for watching. Join us again next time. For The Entrepreneurial Artist, I'm Julie Swanson.
Look at him, he's got it all against him. Still he's so amazing, makes you feel so small. Little me, nothing much to speak of, nothing till he found me. How could I not fall? So I'm just a little foolish, I'm just a little blind. I can't deny my feelings, I can't just change my mind. I'm just so small, too plain to please him, too much in love to leave him. I'm lucky he sees me at all. I'm just so small.
Look at her, look look at what she's into. Still she's so astounding, makes you feel so small. Little me, nothing much to speak of, just a guy who loves her, who love her through, who love her through it all. So I'm just a little selfish for just a little guy. I can't disguise my feelings. This love's too big to hide. I'm just so small, I can't forget her. I've known it since I've met her. She makes me feel 40 feet tall. I'm just so small. Little me, just a little crazy, just a sorry outcast. Still I dream I'll grow into something more impressive, into something he'll adore, into nearly any something, just into something more. I'm just so small, but still believing there's some small good in dreaming. In her eyes I imagine, when he holds me I'm hoping, if you step back and stare at it all, I'm not so small, I'm not so small.
The statements provided by Mike Watkins and Matt Barresi depict their unedited thoughts and experiences and are not necessarily representative of those held by the North Central College Center for Entrepreneurship and Small Business or the Coleman Foundation.